wanted to register the question that, or I don't know, the caveat that they question whether level of service, no matter what you call it, translates to pedestrian cyclist travel. So if we really want to do multimodal transport, we have to work on a different measure to capture comfort and safety, which are much more important than congestion, which is what LOS tracks. And we know that staff is thinking about that and working on it, and we also know that staff knows a lot about it. So Councilmember Ackman in particular hopes for future changes that focus on our A20 goals. The 711 Church Street rezoning, supplementary regs, site plan, and development agreement all passed. 732 Packard PUD zoning district and supplemental regulations passed first reading. And the council voted to put a charter amendment to approve a sustainable energy utility on the ballot for November. So please vote and bring everyone you know to the polls to vote. Did I forget anything, Ms. DeLeo?
No, that was all of the council business. That was all of the planning commission business at council, yes.
And that was really all the council business. Everything else was just filler. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Ms. Kelly, manager report?
No manager report.
Great, thank you. Do other committee liaisons have report? Yes.
The Ordinance Revisions Committee met on April 23rd and discussed a petition that's been submitted for 5 amendments to the TC1 zoning district, which include things like curb cuts, modifying allowable building dimensions for larger sites, exceptions to minimum building frontage requirements, exceptions for use of specific standards for parking structures, and clarifying how we define a block. So we discussed those. There's no action taken in the revisions committee meetings, but those will be coming to the full commission at some point. May 23rd. They'll be coming to all of you to discuss, so you can look forward to that.
Great.
May 14th.
23rd. I said with the working session.
The next working session.
Yeah, would
Soon.
be next week.
Next month, later this month. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Do other commissioners have anything to report? Quick update on the Transportation Commission. We met on April 18th, so it was a little while ago now, but we just reviewed budget and the Act 51 funding allocation. That's the gasoline tax, just something to be aware of. It's kind of starting to plateau in terms of Act 51 revenue. Sidewalk construction millage, looking at the Main Street upgrade, the sidewalk from Ann Arbor Salinas Stadium. Climate action millage is going towards crosswalk, streetlights, and bike lane upgrades. It's about $700,000. Other ones, we talked about serious crash responses and some of the improvements that we're seeing around town. So the East Medical Center Drive construction is going until the end of 2024. And I think the one, MDOT has indicated a willingness to add non-motorized connections across US 23, but that's still kind of underway as far as discussions go. And then the State and Hill improvements, they did say that the constructions are intended to be completed by August. So just, we'll see if that happens. But just wanted to give everybody a heads up. Any other commissioners with reports? If not, written communications are included in today's agenda. All right, we'll keep moving on. We're on to agenda number 6, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for persons to speak up to 3 minutes about an issue that's not listed as a public hearing on this agenda. We'll first call on individuals here and then remote participants. So speakers during this public hearing remotely, please press *9 if listening by phone, or use a raise hand feature if viewing through the web link. And for phone access, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will select callers who've raised their hand using the last 3 digits of the phone number or by name if available. You'll hear an automated announcement saying that the host is allowing you to speak, and when speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute background sound so we can hear you clearly. For either method of participation, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone present that would like to speak at this time about a matter that is not on the agenda? Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Charlie. Ken Garber, 28 Haverhill Court. I'm a little sleep deprived, so forgive me if I get some of the details wrong. And this just came up. But back some time ago when you removed the FAR premium incentives for the downtown, I suggested that you revisit the exceptions, which, if you remember, allow a downtown building to build 30% higher if they do one of two things: meet the definition of affordable housing or sustainability. Affordable housing definition, I believe, was 15% of units at 60% AMI. Sustainability was solar panels covering 60% of the roof area, or electrification ready, which is defined as, basically some electrical panels and conduit. And I argued then that, given that we've allowed FAR, basically any kind of bulk at this point without meeting any incentives, that we should tighten up the incentives on the exception side, especially on the sustainability definition, which my worst nightmare was that some massive building was going to come in and claim 30% higher height while calling itself electrification ready, but burning gas for heat. And that has just happened. This hasn't reached you yet, but there's a building at 621 Church that hasn't formally submitted a plan yet, but they're going in front of the design review board this month, I think. 19 stories, over 200 units, kind of cover an entire city block. Really big building, and they're going to be 195 feet high, which is 45 feet higher than the 150-foot height limit for D1. And they're saying they're doing this for sustainability reasons. And so they're putting some solar panels on the roof. They'll only serve a fraction of the building's electrical needs. And they're not electrifying the building. They're calling it electrification ready. And so what we have here is a building that's going to be taking advantage of our sustainability incentive and will be burning gas throughout this massive building, which seems to me that the incentive for sustainability is a failure here. You may argue that, well, we want to go higher anyway. Heard that a lot last night at City Council from a lot of the public. But to the extent that you intend buildings to be relatively decarbonized, the definition for height exception in the UDC really isn't working, and we're seeing the first example of it now, and you'll see this building at some point come before you. So I don't know if it's too late to change that definition. I would argue that buildings should be both affordable housing and sustainable, and that we should ask for electrification at the time of construction. That's what I said last time. I don't know if it would be a breach of faith at this point, now that the developer has moved forward. I think my time is up, right? Sorry.
Oh,
I said enough.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Do we have any other public comments? I'm going to actually, before we get to the remote participants, apparently they cannot hear us on Zoom right now, so I would like to call for a quick 3-minute recess to restart, and then we will resume public hearing. So give us...
Folks can hear on the CCAN broadcast, but I just need to check that everything is as it's supposed to be, because we got some feedback, so just give us a few minutes.
Yep, we'll reconvene at 7:17. Thank you.
I missed it earlier where the outlets are.
Down here.
Yeah.
I'm going to call us back to session. That was my gavel. We're back to public comments. Is there anyone else here in person that would like to speak at this public comment? Seeing no one, we're going to move on to remote participants.
Phone number ending in 955, you have permission to address the Planning Commission. You will need to unmute.
Please hold for technical difficulties.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Great. Can I give kind of comment on the work plan, or is there going to be a public hearing on that?
There will not be a public hearing on that. I think Mr. Westfall.
Great. Okay, so Kirk Westfall, 3505 Charter Place. I sent you all an email. I'm sure if you're able to read it, but I was remarking on the work plan. Basically, it looks like you have a really busy agenda tonight, and I know the work plan is coming last. If you all are prepared to amend it and approve it tonight, that's great. If there may be things that you all aspire to accomplish this year, in parallel with the comp plan going on, and they don't have to be on the work plan, and you don't have amendments prepared, I would just ask that you postpone it and give that some thought, as well as I hope you can get back into that, my proposed amendments and consideration as well. That's all I got, but good luck tonight, and thanks for taking my call.
Thank you, Mr. Westfall.
Our next caller is phone number ending in 194. You have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hello, this is Rita Mitchell calling from the west side of Ann Arbor, and I'm calling about the Southtown development agreement that you're considering tonight and the changes.
Excuse me?
The first I'd like to
Excuse
say...
me?
Hello?
Hi, I'm so sorry. So this is a public comment with respect to items not on the agenda. We will have a public hearing at the actual agenda item. So if you could actually call back, it should be the next item. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There are no further hands raised.
Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll close public comments. We're going to move on to agenda number 7, which is the public hearings scheduled for the next business meeting. And with that, I will defer to Kelly.
For the Planning Commission meeting on May 21st, 2024, there are 4 items. The first of which is 2270 Platte Road Site Plan for Planning Commission approval. A site plan to amend the approved Viridian at County Farm South site plan by redesigning buildings V, K, K, L, M, CC through DD and EE through FF, increasing the total units from 110 to 121. Building locations generally remain the same, while the types of buildings proposed and number of units per building changes. The Viridian at County Farm South development has 110 approved dwelling units for proposed of 121 in single-family, townhouse, and apartment buildings on a 363,945 square foot, 8-acre site, zoned Viridian at County Farm PUD District. The district is mixed income, mixed housing, sustainable neighborhood of up to 16 dwelling units per acre. The second of which is 3310 Washtenaw, the site plan for Planning Commission approval. The proposed demolition of an existing restaurant and construction of a new 5,240 square foot restaurant building and 50 new parking spaces. The site is zoned C3 French Commercial. No drive-through is proposed. 2862 Stone School Road annexation and zoning. Ann Arbor Public Schools initiated annexation of a vacant 2.65 acre parcel from Pittsfield Township and rezoning to PL Public Land. And finally, 3801 Stone School annexation and zoning. Ann Arbor Public Schools initiated annexation of a vacant 3 acre parcel from Pittsfield Township and rezoning to public land.
Thank you. With that, we're going to go on to section 8A, which is unfinished business. There are none. So with that, we go to regular business. This is 1601 South State Street, Southtown rezoning. This is the offer to amend the conditional zoning statement of conditions. This is the petition to amend the Southtown zoning statement of conditions adopted and incorporated by ordinance number 23-24 to zone a 1.66 acre site, C1AR, Campus Business Residential District with conditions by restating paragraph 2.d from the property shall have no natural gas connections except for emergency backup power to the property will demonstrate continuous microgrid operations at 60 to 75% less carbon intensity than the electricity incumbent DTE. Staff recommendation is approval, and with that, we will head on to petitioner presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Margaret Posher, and I am the developer. And we are, as you said, requesting a restatement of conditions so that we can provide the city with a much more sustainable project. And with that, I will turn it over to my right hand and energy expert, Heidi Posher.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's see. Help me, Hank.
Not working? 2 seconds.
Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is just what is this microgrid? So the microgrid is a computer-controlled system that is actually housed inside of not only the Southtown footprint, but the Southtown building. It will involve fuel cells that run on renewable natural gas, solar, battery storage, a geothermal system, and a vehicle-to-grid charging system. All of those, what we call generation assets or storage assets, will be monitored by a microgrid controller. It'll have 24/7 real-time insight into what's happening with the assets, and we will configure various programs in terms of what our outcome objectives are. Most of those will relate to sustainability or reliability. They'll integrate with the building system. The building management system runs all of the mechanical operations, so the HVAC, the lighting system. And the purpose of this integration is to optimize the overall operation to be as sustainable as possible, but also to allow for shelter in place. We're going to have 221 units at Southtown, so probably about 400 residents and 54 parking spots. And what that means is that there's going to be an awful lot of people that bike or walk as the city wants and as we want. But when it comes to bad weather or extreme conditions, we don't feel like giving them any other option other than sheltering in place is good as a property owner. So we want to allow for fully energized shelter in place. Our objective is to maintain a carbon negative operation, so not just do better than, but to actually kind of set a new bar in terms of operation. And then lastly, to establish and maintain energy economy for Southtown residents. We're very aware, based on our experience and our ongoing research and involvement in the energy industry, that retail utility rates are going to do nothing but increase, and we actually think we have a solution here to manage those to a great degree, and that's important to us as well. Can you do the next slide, Hank?
Yeah. Could you actually see if it works again?
Yeah. Okay, there we go, thanks. So what's the language in the zoning modification? What we're committing to is to establish performance versus what the incumbent electricity provider, DTE, does. And we're also referring to that as business as usual. So most of the residents in Ann Arbor get their utility service, whether it's gas or electric, through DTE. And so that's that's a bar that we're evaluating our own performance against. We'll basically be coordinating all of the assets that I talked about that are included in the microgrid. But one of the assets that relates specifically to this request are fuel cells that we'll have on site. The fuel cells will be powered by renewable natural gas, which we're going to get directly through contracting with farming operators. And I'm going to talk in the next slide about what that looks like specifically. But the outcomes that we're trying to support are carbon intensity reduction. So by our measurement, we think that we can actually reduce the amount of CO2 or greenhouse gas that's put out into the environment by about 7,000 metric tons, which is on a year-over-year basis, which is pretty substantial. We also think that we'll be able to lower on-site electricity costs, especially as electricity rates increase for typical electricity clients. The greenhouse gas and what happens with that's a big question, and we know we have to not only answer that question now, but provide information about how we're doing in that performance objective. When the chemical process that the fuel cell uses to take gas and breaks it down into water, hydrogen, and CO2, there will be no combustion on site, and we'll also have CO2 collection units that will basically capture that and allow us to sell it to another user. We can also sequester it, but the CO2 will be completely captured by the fuel cell. One thing that's really important to note is this is a transitional plan. Obviously, our objective would be to use either even more sustainable, more renewable fuel, a synthetic fuel, what the oil companies are calling a molecular fuel, to fuel these fuel cells. And an important thing to know about this as we make this transition is that the fuel cells themselves stay in place. The filters are typically changed periodically, so every 5 to 7 years, those filters get changed. And the chemistry inside the filters is basically customized to whatever the fuel source is. So if we, for example, went from renewable natural gas to hydrogen, there would be different chemistry inside the filters, but we would use the same fuel cells. So it's not going to be any kind of onerous cost to us to change to an even greener fuel when those become available. And I just think it's important to remember because this really will help us hit all three of our objectives, which are sustainability, resilience, and lower cost overall. All right, let's talk about cows and the manure. How do we make this renewable fuel? Well, first of all, manure is collected from dairy farmers, and it's put into digesters. And the digesters keep all of that gas from going out into the atmosphere. The anaerobic process that collects that gas creates 45 to 65% pure methane as an outcome of that process. It also creates, I only have 3 minutes left out of 10. Wow, okay. It also creates water, or fertilizer, and bedding. So the gas goes through its own filtering as part of that digestion system. It gets injected into the fuel system. The gas is purified from there. They take out all the noxious gases, and they increase it to a greater methane content, which is about 90% pure. So why is this renewable? Well, it absorbs more greenhouse gas than it emits, and it also prevents the manure from expressing greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. A couple interesting numbers. Renewable natural gas, negative 90 carbon score. Solar, 18, positive 18 carbon intensity score. Regular natural gas, 16 carbon intensity score. So this is quite a bit lower. This is what it looks like. It goes into, when it comes to us, it goes through the fuel cell. It comes in as almost pure methane. It mixes with oxygen. And like I said, it creates electricity, water, hydrogen, carbon dioxide. That carbon dioxide is captured on site, and it's either sold to a third party or it can be sequestered. Really important chart here. The blue line, just below 60, is what almost everyone in Ann Arbor is performing at in terms of the electricity they buy from DTE. The orange line is what DTE says it's going to do. The green line would be our fuel cell if we were operating on landfill gas. The blue line is landfill gas plus carbon capture. And the purple line that's less than zero is if we use renewable natural gas and capture carbon, which is what we actually intend to do. I'm just going to zip through to this slide because I'm sure we're going to do some more talking later.
I think I have liberty to extend the time.
Okay. Okay. Great. Good, because I really set up there.
Yeah. No, we want to.
Now I just went into Gill mode. Okay. So on the right-hand side, we've got the business as usual, right? So if we had built the building to regular 2015 standards and we met that building code and we powered it through DTE's electrical system, and we just met all of the objectives in terms of the code and the mechanical systems, and got DTE Electric and put their transformers in our building, we would create about 25.6 metric tons of greenhouse gas per square foot per year. On the left-hand side is our approach, and our approach is to do the mass timber construction. So that means off-site panel construction. That means use Michigan green electricity as we build. It means use a passive house envelope to the extent that we can without really messing up our geothermal system, because it's a tricky mistress, and you got to make sure you protect that field. So that's our number one objective. We'll use geothermal. We'll use heating and cooling load capacity that runs on heat pumps and chiller loads to optimize that geothermal system. We'll optimize all of our mechanical systems, whether it's air exchangers, everything that you can do to make a sustainable decision. That's what we've done with the design choices around Southtown. We'll include tenant demand reduction, and as part of the tenant demand reduction, as we create carbon intensity avoided incentives and sell those carbon credits out into the marketplace, we'll reward our tenants. We'll reward our tenants for their participation in the program as well. So it'll be very much a holistic environment around conserving energy. So we haven't even gotten to the part until we get to the last square about actually using fuel. Whatever's left in terms of the demand of the building, after we take all of those measures on the left-hand side, we'll have a dispatch order that's as green as it possibly can be. So the first dispatch asset is solar, followed by energy that's stored from solar charging. So the dispatch of last resort is using the fuel cell, which again will have renewable natural gas from dairy farmers and runs at a negative carbon intensity, because that fuel's just so carbon intensive based on the amount of CO2 that it's already captured in the process of either making it or before it actually gets to the digester. When you add up all of that efficiency, number one, you're actually avoiding 31.4 metric tons of greenhouse gas per square foot as opposed to burning 25.6. But even more importantly, as a collective, for the entire year after year, you are performing at negative 7,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas, and that's scope 1 and scope 2. So the highest order and the biggest hitter in terms of sustainability, which is, incredibly important. Help me, Hank.
Yeah, about
All right.
10 seconds remaining, but
Okay.
why don't we extend it?
All right.
How long do you need?
Like 30 seconds.
Okay.
30 seconds.
Thank you.
So, because I know there's going to be a lot of questions, and
Sure.
I'll just answer the rest of it in the
Yeah.
questions. As I mentioned, electricity costs are going up because they have to. There's lots of infrastructure that has to be replaced. There's lots of upgrades that have to be made, and there's lots of generation fleets that have to be substantially upgraded into renewable standards to meet with mandates that are handed down by the government. What we think we'll be able to do is keep our pricing very consistent, and we'll be able to keep it much more in control in terms of the overall impact to our customers. So between 2026 and 2040, we forecast that energy bill savings will be more than $400,000 to the tenants of Southtown versus other folks that are paying DTE rates as a function of these increases that are unavoidable. Okay. Accountability measures. We've come up with some language that's going to go into the development agreement, and it basically goes through everything that I said. And it just kind of walks through the process of transitioning between renewable natural gas to whatever the most sustainable objective is, or fuel type is for us. We don't know what's going to happen with green carbon or with green hydrogen. We don't know what's going to happen with any other kind of forms of synthetic or molecular gas. I know that there's, with respect to the renewable natural gas, some people have asked the question, well, what if you can't make a contract with dairy farmers? I mean, Missy Stoltz makes a point that there's plenty of feedstock available where that came from. So, maybe we'll do a project with the city to do some other form of digester. The objective, though, is to get below the line of sustainability, and there are many, many reasons to do that. It's an opportunity in terms of sustainability. It's an opportunity for our company as well in terms of pushing the envelope in terms of creating value. And it doesn't take very long in terms of studying the climate economy to understand how true that is. So it's both an objective in terms of meeting the objectives of the city, but it's also an objective for good business and figuring out ways to take advantage of the climate economy, and that's what I feel like we're doing. So there'll be an annual report. It'll talk about performance. It'll be very data intensive. We'll be collecting all sorts of data anyway, and that central comparison that we're promising to in terms of the zoning language will be at the center of everything that's in that report. And then I included this in here. I don't think we need to go through it. These fuel cells are very, very safe. We can have lots of discussion about that, but they've been in these environments for 200 years. Those Yankees are really something. But for the last 20 years in Connecticut, but there's like 800 units operating, and they're monitored 24/7 by this company. So I included some information in there. It's more of as a takeaway, but they're incredibly safe. All right, thank you for the extra time.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now we move on to staff presentation. Ms. Leo.
Thank you. I also want to mention that we have Missy Stoltz on Zoom.
Oh, thank you.
As mentioned, this is the 1601 South State Street, Southtown rezoning. It's an offer to amend the conditional zoning statement of conditions. In summary, the site is currently zoned C1AR with conditions, being A, there's a maximum height limit, B, a maximum vehicle parking space limit, C, a use limitation, and D, a limitation on natural gas connections. The proposed zoning is C1AR with conditions, repeating A, B, and C, but D will be a requirement to operate a carbon-efficient continuous microgrid. Staff report in a couple different places lists the exact language that will be swapped out in the conditional zoning statement of conditions. An amendment to change or an amendment or a change to a conditional zoning statement of conditions. That was the attorney's office came up with that phrase. Being adopted and incorporated into Chapter 55 of the code is subject to review and approval procedures of a rezoning petition, as if it was C1AR to PL. The staff report goes into a little bit of some existing conditions and background of the Southtown project, and linked to the staff report were the other staff reports for the actual Southtown project. Happy to get into them, but I'll skip over them for this moment. I think as thoroughly mentioned, but it's worth repeating, the current power plan and what was the basis for rezoning and site plan approval was the project was to be powered using the DTE electrical grid and having a internal combustion generator operated by natural gas just for its emergency backup. The proposed power plan is as just described, but it's they will power and operate an on-site fuel cell to generate its own electricity, hence the term microgrid. There's a little bit of background to help explain what a fuel cell is. I think that's also been well covered in tonight's presentation. And so with that, I will say that staff recommends that the offer to amend the conditional zoning statement of conditions is accepted because it meets the intention for a reduced carbon intense building and will result in a project that's both more sustainable and climate friendly than conventional projects, as well as the originally accepted condition. Happy to answer any follow-up questions, or I'm sure the Poshers are as well. They might be more able to answer technical fuel cell questions.
I sure hope so, otherwise we're all in trouble, yeah. Thanks, Alexa.
Yes.
Well, I had a question for staff.
Oh, I think we go on to public hearing, and then we'll, thank you. Okay, thank you for the staff presentation. With that,
I just wanted to check if Missy would like to add anything from a staff perspective.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, and apologies on sometimes Zoom's a little sloppy. I am appreciative of the innovation that we're hearing here, and would just add this is something that is unique if we're thinking about the future of microgridding broadly throughout the city. And so OSI is really kind of leaning in to learn as much as we can from this type of project, whether it moves forward in this iteration or other space. So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
great. Thank you. We're now moving on to public hearing. This is an opportunity for persons to speak up to 3 minutes about this particular item. We'll first call on individuals present to address the commission, then remote participants. To speak during this public hearing remotely, please press *9 if listening by phone, or use a raise hand feature if viewing through the web link. For phone access, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-663-41226. City staff will select callers that raise their hand using the last 3 digits of the phone number or name if available. You'll hear an automated announcements that the host is allowing you to speak, and when speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute your background noises so that we can hear you clearly. For either method of participation, please state your name and address at the beginning of the comments. Do we have anybody present that would like to address the commission?
Thank you, Chair Lee. Where can I be most audible to the remote audience?
Actually, if one of our petitioner guests could make room for Mr. Gerber to make a public comment.
The microphone.
Yes, the microphone is right there. Yep.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Lee. Ken Garber again. First of all, I want to point out just how unique this circumstance is. I've been attending planning commissions regularly longer than any of you, with the exception of Commissioner Weatherby or Commissioner Mills. And you took a long time off. But I've never heard any developer talk about things like carbon accounting or emissions prevented or carbon intensity, much less produce an annual report on all these subjects. And just that fact alone makes this just, an exceptional kind of event to me. I need time to absorb the details of the proposal. I really haven't had time to look at the packet materials, but I do have I'm inclined for sure to support the petition to change the to change the conditions for approval of this project. I wasn't happy about the new natural gas connection, but given the fact that they're removing themselves from DTE electricity and that the natural gas will be used as a last resort, that's acceptable to me. So overall, I know probably other callers will disagree with me, but I think this is really worth digging into, and for lessons for other buildings around around the city, and for possibly standards. The questions I have, I know my time is running out. Carbon capture I'd love to learn about exactly what technology you're thinking of. I've been reading about low-temperature solid sorbent CO2 capture and regeneration. The problem with this and all other carbon capture technologies I've been reading is just they're very energy intensive.
25%
25% what?
additional load.
Additional load, right. So that's one concern. You're going to need more electricity for that. On the hydrogen side, I was a little concerned by the statement in the staff report that if pure hydrogen can be used to produce the electricity, the Southtown microgrid could be completely carbon-free. I assume you're talking about green carbon, not carbon produced from methane, using methane cracking or steam reforming.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only green there is.
Right.
Yeah.
So your carbon accounting will take into account upstream emissions and methane if you go that route and so forth. Okay. Those are my questions and those are my comments. I'm really glad I showed up today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garber. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak present? Seeing no one else, who do we have remotely?
Phone number ending in 194, you have permission to address the Planning Commission.
Hello, this is Rita Mitchell calling from the west side of Ann Arbor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Better?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm calling about this project, and I agree that the approach is an innovative one, and it's great to get away from DTE. At the same time, I have a serious concern about the source of the renewable natural gas, let's call it that, particularly with the source being agricultural, because of the perpetuation of animal factory farm production for that source, which is polluting on its own and standalone from the methane that will be produced, and also that the methane that will produce is nothing, whether it is from cows, not fossil, but it is still a greenhouse gas with serious heating potential, and getting it to the site is likely to have the same kind of leak concerns that we have with methane that we would get from DTE. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about the technical aspects of dealing with the carbon capture and the energy required to produce either blue or green hydrogen. So green hydrogen, as I understand it, is produced from renewable energy sources such as wind and solar. Blue hydrogen is produced from natural gas, what's called natural gas, which is actually methane, once again. So the emissions immediately in this area will be reduced, which is super. But some place along the route, wherever the hydrogen is produced, will have some pollution associated with it, I believe. So I'd really like to understand that. And I'd like to understand the process of accounting for the performance of the program. So once again, I just want to say great for moving forward in something that's innovative and different from DTE, but I think this requires a lot of detail to understand and rely on it, and to actually have energy provided to this project that doesn't pollute downriver in Lake Erie, where the pollution from our factory farms, at least that are local to our area, relatively local to Ann Arbor, goes. We get the blue-green algae right there and polluting Lake Erie, so that's a worry. Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anybody else?
Adam Goodman, you have permission to address the Planning Commission for 3 minutes.
Adam Goodman, 400 Virginia Avenue. This is a really interesting presentation, and it's an exciting concept. I hope it works out well. And of course, I do think that the petition here is reasonable and should be approved. But really, I would have preferred that these conditions not exist at all. I mean, if this is what the developer wants to do, I'm happy to support it, but I think this notion that we have writing extremely specific conditions into our zoning code to make every rezoning a totally bespoke, unique project that, cannot adapt to, different realities in the world without having to go entirely through the legislative zoning process again. I think that that's not the right approach, broadly speaking, for our city to be taking when we have, a massive scale of the problem of the housing crisis and climate crisis. But if the original condition about, connection to DTE and natural gas had not been written into the zoning, then the developers here could have proceeded with this plan without having to come back to planning commission and city council to get approval for that. And I sort of wish it had been done that way. But if this is the approach that everybody wants to take, fair enough. I'm in favor. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
There are no further hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll give it just one more second. Okay, with that, I will close public comment. I'm going to read the proposed motion for the Planning Commission. This is the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission hereby recommends that the mayor and city council approve rezoning 1601 South State Street, quote-unquote, Southtown, by accepting the offer to amend the conditional zoning statement of conditions to change from prohibiting natural gas connections except for emergency backup power to demonstrating a continuous microgrid operation at 60 to 75% less carbon intensity than electricity incumbent DTE, provided in paragraph D.2. Moved by Commissioner White, seconded by Councilmember Dish. We are in discussion. Who would like to kick us off? Commissioner Adams.
I just have a question. And Alexis, I'm not sure if this is a question for the city attorney or not. I'm not sure what procedural posture we're in here, because I saw the note from the city attorney and the staff report, and that makes it sound like we're in a rezoning, a traditional rezoning petition context where we would have a free hand to take the proposal and make changes to it. But it's being also packaged as an offer, a voluntary offer under the separate section of the Michigan Code for voluntary conditions attached to zoning, which we cannot alter or mess with. So I'm wondering if the city attorney provided any color on what latitude we have.
I do think I can answer this. So this is a rezoning from C1AR with 4 very specific conditions, and the original conditions are in the packet. And then this is an offer to rezone it to C1A/R with 4 conditions. The first 3 happen to be the same, but the 4th is different, and then that document is also attached in the packet. And yes, the state statute says that the City of Ann Arbor City Council is, non-legal term, allowed to accept conditions. They must be voluntarily offered, and they are not negotiated, unlike, say, a planned unit development. You can, in your discussion, make it clear about why you are accepting them or why you are not accepting them. But you can't say, for example, could you make the microgrid be 40 to 60% better? This is a yes or no on the condition that they are offering. But like I said, in the discussion, you can tell them if you do not like this offer, you can be clear about why you don't like it. They can come back or not. So there is no negotiating with this offer, unlike a planned unit development, but you can be clear about why you don't accept this offer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Does that answer your question?
It gets me most of the way there. I'll sharpen the question.
Okay.
If I wanted to in 2 motions, reject the offer and strike condition 2D completely as a change to the existing zoning, which I am allowed to do, can I do that in this meeting, or is that a separate meeting to do the second step?
So I think that you cannot strike it. I think that you can say why you are rejecting this
Got it.
offer.
That's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Abrams.
Maybe also a question for staff. There was talk of this annual sustainability performance report, but I don't see it mentioned in the conditional zoning statement of conditions, so I'm wondering where that would show up.
It is not. It is in the draft development agreement, which I did not print, but it is an attachment.
Okay.
It's, look for the attachment called, something called First Amendment to Southtown Development Agreement.
Okay.
And
I will
it
look
is
for it.
there.
Thanks.
So it's attachment number 8 on the screen, Alex.
Okay. Yes, exactly.
Councilmember Dish.
I would like to invite the petitioner to respond to the concerns that one of the callers made. They, in writing, they expressed that because this is complex technology and the whole introduction of methane, blah, 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 they expressed the concern that this project will default to simply going into a traditional agreement to get methane from DTE.
Got it.
Got
Okay.
it, right.
Got it,
So
yeah.
complexity will,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, first of all, just as a general response to the caller that was talking about concerns about farming and downstream impacts, it would be hard for me to disagree with that. Like the sustainability, digging out of the sustainability, the climate hole that we're in, is going to be an extremely complex process. There's no magic bullet to get us out of it. Every comment that she made is a legitimate comment. Let me start with a couple things. So I just want to go back to right now, everybody in Ann Arbor who gets gas from or electricity from DTE, where it's not under a special program, which is limited, by the way. MI Green Power is limited, and they can't cover all of the demand for that. But there is some pretty extreme greenhouse gas being created by typical generation because it's 85% fossil fuel intensive. So what are our options with respect to using that microgrid and help, or with respect to the fuel cell, which I think is really the big part of the concern here. It's not the microgrid. It's that last order of dispatch, which is the fuel cell, and powering it with gas. So, and just as a reminder, we've done everything we can to make that slice of demand as small as it possibly can be, which I think is important. So we spent a lot of money to make the extra modifications in terms of the design, putting the geothermal field in, optimizing the PV. And that's not anything other than to say, we get it. We get using the gas it's a tough swallow, right? But within the context of all of that, what's really important to us as a business is to operate below carbon neutrality, to get into the negative. I mean, carbon neutrality is great, but if we can get into the negative, that's even better. And we are financially motivated. I just want to, and I don't want to make a big deal about that, but I want to tell you why. That last degree really matters to us. It's a big deal. It's a way that we can support more sustainable development. So it's not just a notional objective, it's really important. Why does that matter? Because in order to meet our business objectives, we have to be able to honestly account for the same kind of performance that the city of Ann Arbor wants us to account for, which is, show me your math. Exactly how are you coming up with this performance standard? And if we can show 0 or less than 0, not only are we meeting our goals with respect to what we've agreed to with the city, which is important to us, but we will have put ourselves on a different track in terms of being participants in the climate economy in ways that will help us to extend more sustainable development, which is what we want to do. So there's no way to fake it. If the hydrogen is gray or blue and not green, then it doesn't count. it doesn't get us below that, into that purple line where we want to be. We could say, people have asked, didn't come up here in question, people have asked, well, how do you know you're going to get this dairy contract? I mean, we could use renewable or landfill gas, but it still doesn't have, it's not as green when you add things up as the dairy natural gas is. So we're all going to have to agree to some sort of calculus around how do I add up the carbon over here, and how do I take away the carbon over here? We're all going to have to agree to some system of accounting that moves us forward. And and I think the caller was actually doing that. She was saying, innovation around these important things is should be supported, but we're not going to get to a perfect, but here are my concerns. And I get that those are concerns, but we got to make forward progress somehow. So starting with, we can do the math around being green is really important. And the greener we get, the better it's going to be for us in terms of meeting our objectives with the city, but also meeting our participation objectives in terms of the carbon economy or the climate economy. So none of that's wrong, but we've got to come up with a least common denominator way of measuring all of this stuff out. Otherwise, we're never going to make the transition. We're just going to be stuck. And I don't want to be stuck at 7,000 metric tons of greenhouse gas a year at a brand new development that's supposed to be really sustainable. That's just gross. I don't know, does that answer the question? Or not? Maybe not.
No, it does.
Okay.
I mean, to my mind, yes, I mean, I find it implausible that your development, having a contract with dairy farmers, one dairy farmer, is going to perpetuate factory farming. I think that...
Of course not.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and you spoke about scope 1 and 2 emissions. You're clearly thinking about scope 3 emissions because you've made this choice of your fuel source. But that doesn't make you responsible. I mean, almost, it's the accounting there, I don't think anyone has a model for.
Whether we buy that gas from that farmer or not, it's going to have absolutely no impact on large format dairy farming. But it does make a difference, right? It does get the manure into the digester and out of the field, and it does take advantage of what the intent is, which is to start using the waste that we're creating in a circular economy.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
Thanks. This is really exciting and interesting. And so I've got a number of questions, just so I make sure that I'm understanding kind of what we're talking about. So it's been mentioned a couple times. Clarity, are you not connecting at all then to the DT electricity?
No, we are not.
Okay, so before it was like no gas connection, and now it is only gas connection, no electricity connection.
Ironically.
Right, okay. And then the microgrid does that also cover the space conditioning, or will that be through, I don't know as much as I ought to know about how fuel cells work. Like, how is space conditioning working?
Yeah, so we have an HVAC system. We have a mechanical system that brings fresh air in. We have water-based heat pumps because we'll have one geothermal field and possibly two. We might have redundant geothermal fields because we're so concerned about maintaining operations. So all of those devices that are in a typical, as green as you can get environment will basically connect to an energy system that is, whether it's fueled by PV or whether it's fueled by the storage or whether it's fueled by the fuel cell, will provide it electricity. So everything gets converted to electricity on site.
Okay.
With no combustion. And then I think your question might be, is it still an all-electric environment? Yes, it is.
Well, more because, right, you can, this is combining now. And what we want to do is try to combine the heating system to something like a common denominator that, right? Just to make sure that in the future, when renewable natural gas is not right, when it's green hydrogen or when, like, whatever.
Missy and I might do something crazy and just partner with the wastewater facility. It's like our biggest problem will be the supply chain. How do we get that gas from wastewater to the real estate developments? Wouldn't that be awesome? Yeah.
I'm curious about the size of the battery then in here. Do you have any sense of
like the physical size?
No, we're in megawatts.
Kilowatts.
Or kilowatts. We're not up to a megawatt yet.
No.
Okay.
It's probably going to
I have no idea how much to put it all together.
Okay.
Right.
So the overall, it's all based on demand.
Yeah.
Right? So the overall demand of the entire 226,000 square feet of real estate development is about 960 kilowatts.
Okay.
Which is just under a megawatt.
Almost a megawatt.
Almost. So we'll actually have, and the architects are here, and I should never jump in and talk about stuff that I'm not an expert in. They definitely can answer these questions better, but it looks like we're going to have 2 battery components that are going to be about 250 kilowatts each, and then we'll have PV, obviously. And then we'll have, and the only limitation to the BV other than what we're planning on right now is we're going to have 3 fuel cells. And those fuel cells we're going to do a lot with the waste heat. And there's really 2 ways you can use the waste heat. You can use it to actually heat, or ironically again, you can actually convert heat to chilling. And so we'll have some other equipment that has to go on the roof that will actually take all of the waste heat off of the fuel cells and either convert it to heating for other areas and put it in the air, or they'll turn it into cooling. The whole objective with the fuel cells is it relates to not only how much gas you use, but how efficiently they run. So we want another way that we can really minimize the impact in terms of how much gas we use is to make sure we're getting every last bit of value out of the thermal capacity as well as the electrical capacity. And that's where the heat comes in.
Great. The questions that I have for staff are about, a lot of times when we talk about this energy area on commission, it's what is the enforcement mechanism, especially that requires annual compliance. And so my reading is that the enforcement is in carbon offsets. Is that if they're not meeting the target, then it's purchasing offsets? Is that right? Am I reading that right?
I believe you are reading that right. It is also not my area of expertise.
Okay.
But that's what we offered, right?
Okay.
And so, and again, that is it's, everybody else is still at, at the DTE numbers. So we're saying if we don't get to 75% of that, we're gonna pay to make sure that we deliver that. Yeah.
The practical consideration in that too is what happens, you could be on time with knowing your numbers, but what happens if we don't know DTE's carbon intensity by the first month of the year?
We'll be tracking that too. We'll be tracking that in 5-minute intervals too.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, you might go back and audit it, and you might say, well, you guys said it was this, and it was this, and then, we'll settle up. But, in order to, I'll just say this, in order to meet our objectives, like I was telling you before about in terms of participating in the climate economy, we need to know that, and it can't be wrong. Because we'll be selling carbon credits to other people, and they'll want accountability.
For the question about the enforceability and the development agreement, Missy unmuted to speak to.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Mills, for the question. It's a really important one, and I just want to offer 2 things that I think are relevant in the conversation, at least from sustainability advantage. One is we do annual greenhouse gas emissions inventories here at the city, so we are always getting information about the GHG intensity of the electric grid, and of course, we're following the studies in terms of fossil gas and how much is lost cost and distribution and what that means in terms of our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. So we have a baseline that we can be using to do a comparison here with the petitioner. The second thing I wanted to offer is that City Council also passed a series of energy criteria and principles that move through the Energy Commission that actually give guidance on what we mean when we say carbon offsets. Carbon offsets do not mean just going to the market in Ann Arbor and buying the cheapest offset you can get. We actually have very clear guidance from the City Council that carbon offsets have to be additional new renewable energies that we're not displacing someone else on the system. So I just wanted to add that my assumption here, and I don't know if that is fully codified, is that when we do offsets in Ann Arbor, we don't do them like everybody else. We make sure that they really are significant enough in moving the needle in our goals.
I think that probably needs to go into the development agreement, but I understand exactly what she's saying, that it's,
Great.
I would only add that in terms of proposed enforcement, it seems very clear, it seems very enforceable actually, and that of the possible enforcement alternatives that one might think of, such as like disconnect and connect to the electrical grid, or even a one-time fine. This seems a very proportional, very reasonable, very enforceable, and also still furthers the same goal. So I would, without commenting about the very specific language, but the gist of this is something that staff supports, and overall it is enforceable.
Commissioner Weatherby, sorry, did you want to add something to that?
So just kind of following up on that, while I trust you and your interest in this, should there be a different owner at some point who is like, we just use the gas, why are we messing with all this stuff? All that is covered under the development agreement through these, what we just talked about, right?
So that, yes, the zoning runs with the land, so regardless of the owner, the requirement to, if you accept this and it gets rezoned, then this district requires whoever the owner is to operate a continuous microgrid. The development agreement is between the city and this particular developer, but I believe there's a language in it that talks about it applies to successors. If this project never gets built, then the development agreement would also be moot because this Southtown project never be built. But the zoning says even if the Southtown project looks vastly different, there are still 4 things that run with the land.
Mm-hmm. Which would be the performance criteria of 60 to 75% of the business as usual, which is DTE, regardless of how they got there.
Procedurally speaking, it will move on to City Council as well. It's just a recommendation. Commissioner Adams.
Yeah, I feel like I should explain my earlier question. I think since we're stuck with the proposal on the table, I'm inclined to support it as presented. The project's fantastic, and I don't want to tie it up. And it's such an innovative proposal, and it's an innovative project, and it's great. But I asked about rejecting the offer and striking the condition because I'm worried that this isn't the type of thing we ought to be doing in our zoning code. If anything, these things seem more appropriate to put into a development agreement or a site plan. My concern here is that the terms of the offer letter that you submitted make it clear that the actual way this is going to work is far more nuanced and complicated than what's in the zoning contemplates, right?
Absolutely.
The zoning says continuously operational. The zoning has these targets. The zoning's the law. The development agreement and the site plan don't trump what's in the zoning. So later on, when there's a liquidated damages provision that says we buy carbon offsets if we fail, the zoning language doesn't tolerate that on its face. The plain terms say you will continuously operate and you will hit those targets. So as an attorney, I can't square those things. And I would rather have tackled all of these requirements if I could in the development agreement and the site plan, because those documents will make allowances for the things that inevitably happen with systems this complicated. They sometimes fail, they sometimes don't hit the targets. But the language that we're being asked to put into our laws doesn't contemplate that. I worry about the enforcement. I worry about a zoning requirement that measures compliance using unverifiable data generated by a third-party power company. That seems unusual to me. And then finally, as with all of these things, I worry about the fact that we're codifying something into the code that no future project if, heaven forbid, your project doesn't launch, we now have a parcel that's got this highly specific, highly technical energy generation requirement baked into the zoning that we're going to have to deal with. So those are my concerns. I think I'm stuck.
Can I ask you a couple, am I allowed to ask questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Please respond.
So the first question I have is, well, it's just a comment. I think what I'm sensing is that for you, there's a disconnect between the, the actions you might have to take to get to 60 to 75% of performance against DTE. As, there's a disconnect between, okay, I will buy, buying carbon credits as specified by the city, which I think the language probably needs to be cleaned up to be more like what Missy said, not just, acres of land and, a Swiss forest or something like that. I think a future, if there was ever an issue, I think somebody would just come back and say, let me just connect to the DTE grid like you let everybody else, and I won't use I'll use gas only for emergency. But the big thing is that you said that triggered, I should address this, is we would not be relying on DTE's performance, their self-evaluation. There are other ways and that's what we've used to come up with that, I think it's 5,975-ish metric tons of greenhouse gas is the counterfactual that we've calculated. So if we powered this with DTE electricity, that's how much greenhouse gas we would generate every year. That will not come from DTE. That'll come, and it won't come from us. It shouldn't come from us. It will come from a third party that can authenticate that with authority. What we'll provide is basically our metric information with kind of like full insight into the calculations and complete transparency in terms of how we got there. That's how we have to do everything. And I'm sure you sound very knowledgeable about this. The proof of impact in terms of this, any transitions in the carbon, or transactions in the carbon market are becoming more and more and more, kind of like price of admission. You have to be transparent and you have to show your math. So if somebody at the city, Missy, might say, hey, I want to take a look at that report, and take a look at it and say, hey, that math doesn't make sense to me. And she might have a third party authenticate it. None of that language is in there, but how the city chooses to act on what I think is probably pretty important, not because it's our project, but because it is setting a standard. That's up to the city. We just have to make sure that we create authentic data and we apply algorithms correctly and we provide transparency. So we really do want it to be a legitimate proof of impact. I just can't stress that enough.
Thank you. With that, do we have any other final thoughts before we move to a vote? Yes, Commissioner Hammerschmidt, last comment.
My question is for staff.
You have a full agenda.
The annual sustainability, and this is super cool. I understand like less than 50% of it, but like I'm really excited to hear like innovations and sustainability. My concern is, or my question is about the annual sustainability report. Is OSI going to review that? Like, is there a staff capacity for this or an appetite for it, or does this just continue forever? That's what it sounds like in the development agreement. Like, are you guys prepared to take this on, I guess is my question. In perpetuity.
The city of Ann Arbor is prepared to take this on in perpetuity.
I didn't mean you specifically.
But I understand. I think that is a level of detail that needs to be worked out. I think this draft of the first statement, First Amendment, has not yet worked its way through City Hall for that level of specificity or level of detail. I think, so I am confident when I say the city of Ann Arbor is prepared to take this on. But which department will be having initial enforcement, and then if you're here long enough, the office of OSI may become the administration of something else, and the planning department may become the planning services, and so on and so forth, but the city of Ann Arbor is prepared to take this on.
say I have one other small thing. The DTE connection, just to clarify, for gas, is it just for backup, or are you planning on, you are taking gas from them?
Yeah, so we'll pay for the dairy farmer to inject the gas into the system. We'll just take the gas, but then we'll have all of those mechanisms to take the CO2 out. And, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last one, Councilmember Dish.
This is a question for Ms. DeLeo. So I understand Commissioner Adams' objections to the level of specificity that is in zoning here, but my understanding is that in a conditional zoning, or that conditional zoning is an established thing that exists in order to tie a site plan to the zoning. And that is something that is within the city's power to do. And am I missing something?
Yeah, no, not at all. Conditional zoning is, it doesn't have to tie a zoning district to a site plan. Because, I mean, it's a very broad tool. It is not contract zoning, it is conditional zoning. And if you think of it statewide or citywide, we have the ability to accept conditions. Imagine you have a zoning district that allows a huge variety of land uses, but this particular location is right next to a very sensitive thing, and so half of those uses are not appropriate. And so this is a mechanism where we can say, well, you can zone it C3, but these 10 uses are actually not allowed here. The basic the one rule of conditional zoning is that it must further limit whatever the normal allowances are. It cannot allow over, above, and beyond, or it cannot add. This particular Southtown one, it is very specific. The conditions that they are offered are very nuanced, very specific. But they were voluntarily offered, and there is no, if they do no harm, there is no reason not to accept them. And when I say do no harm, they seem to do no harm to the city. They are very restrictive, but they were voluntarily offered, and the developer wants these conditions, and the city incurs no harm by accepting them. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you. And then, oh yeah, final comment from, yes, Commissioner Clark.
So I think it's great that we're going to have the density in this project here, supportive of that. I guess I'm one to lean in favor of simplicity in the zoning code, especially keeping in mind in perpetuity, so just comment on that. I guess I just have a quick question. Will this be in concert with the heating pump, with heat pumps? So it'll be
water-based heat pumps, yeah.
Okay.
For the geothermal system.
And then has there been any on leaks on site? Is there any risk for leaks on site, and has there been any research into that, or?
You're meaning methane leaks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that on-site's really easy to control. What happens upstream, we don't have any control over. So I think, whatever one's interpretation of any side, anything outside of that, but it's really buttoned down on site, because we're capturing the CO2, we're taking, it's like water, energy, CO2. It doesn't, the off-gassing, there's very limited things that it does in heat, so. And we're accounting for all of managing all of that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. I think thank you for the presentation. I think you've addressed all of my questions as well. And with that, we will go to a roll call vote. Ms. Kelly. Sure.
On the motion as presented, Commissioner Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Abrams.
Yes.
Commissioner Weich.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Yes.
Councilmember Dish.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Mills.
Yes.
Commissioner Weatherby.
Yes.
Commissioner Adams.
Yes.
That carries.
All right, thank you very much for moving the bar for us. I wanted to say heck yes. Thank you, have a great night. We will move on to the next one, other business. So this is 1146 South Maple Road, Plan Unit Development Pre-Application Conference. Hickory Way number 3 is proposing a 4-story, 39-unit permanent supportive housing building by Avalon Housing. Will meet National Green Building Standards, have 15% barrier-free units, and provide 700 square feet of community space. The project proposes to annex 1146 South Maple from Scioto Township and rezone to a PUD. It will be adjacent to the existing Hickory 1 and 2 buildings and surrounded by multifamily residential, enhancing natural area, a city park. Staff recommendation is approval. We have our petitioner in person, and so, hello, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for bearing with us. And then with that, yeah, we will move on to petitioner presentation, and bear with us as we get this going and just making sure that the clicker works for you guys.
Okay, go ahead and try the clicker now.
Yep. With that, welcome. I'll hand it over to you guys.
All right, thanks so much. I'm Wendy Cardy-Saxon, Director of Real Estate Development at Avalon Housing, and we'll go over our team members shortly, but really appreciate you having us here so we can chat about our PUD request for Hickory Way Apartments 3 development. Great, so I'll just briefly go over a little bit about Avalon. I think folks know a fair bit, and then the development team, and then really diving into what we're asking for here. So, this is Avalon. So we're really excited as Avalon to bring another new construction development into the city. We currently have 2 developments under construction at the moment. And then in 2021, we brought 70 units online adjacent to this particular property. Those are Hickory Way 1 and 2. And frankly, we've been eyeing this parcel since we were looking at planning those particular units. So we're really excited about being here now. A quick background, Hickory Way 3 is currently in Scioto Township. We have a purchase agreement with the city of Ann Arbor for it. And I'll just say that's really been helpful because having public owners allows us a chance to have the time that we need. That's really good. Mission of Avalon, I think folks are probably pretty familiar, really build healthy, safe, and inclusive supportive housing communities as a long-term solution to homelessness and offering flexible voluntary on-site services to accomplish that for the tenants. And just a couple pictures of existing properties, and we do supportive housing since '92. So our development team, I'll just mention we've got a couple folks from Avalon on the phone. If there are any questions, we've got Aaron Cooper, our Executive Director, Bree Carpenter, our Director of Employee Experience, and John Scott, our Construction Project Manager. Now I'll hand it over to Brandon to...
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brandon Hodges. I'm the principal of Tribe Development. We are a Detroit headquartered affordable housing developer and consultant. We'll be serving as development consultant with Avalon Housing on this transaction. As you can probably see, it takes a village to do an affordable housing deal. And so we have a very dynamic team. We have in the room Fusco Safer and Pappas, who will be our architect of record. We will be releasing a contractor RFP very shortly. We are going full steam ahead in our design process, so wanted to have that contractor selection kind of pick up with that process. We also have Macon Engineering as our civil engineer. ASTI Environmental has done most of our environmental assessments to date. We also have hired a wetland consultant, given some conditions on site, so that would be ECT. And then Avalon Housing will also be the property manager for the site. So this is a bit of an aerial view of the proposed location. As you can see, this is an interesting timestamp because the Hickory Way 1 and 2 is being built directly north. That is, as Wendy mentioned, 70 units in total across 2 buildings. This site is also directly north of the Hanson Nature area, which is directly south. And so this is right on 1146 South Maple on the western side of the street. And our civil engineers provided a bit of comparative zoning analysis. As Wendy mentioned, this will be an annexation that we'll be going through. It's currently located in Scioto Township, so no real zoning exists to date. And Wendy will touch on why we felt the PUD zoning designation was most appropriate for our pursuit of this affordable housing project. And this just gives a little bit of an insight into how we thought about the site, the efficiency, and some of the calculations relative to existing conditions, but also the R4E zoning designation. I'll let Wendy kind of touch on the PUD.
Thanks. So with requesting the PUD, certainly the beneficial impacts, bringing affordable housing as part of this development, half of the units, we're looking at being supportive housing, all of the units being affordable, under 60%. So affordable housing and also high, energy efficiency and green, which we'll touch on in a little bit. We did explore the current zoning districts, and we ran into challenges further leading us to the PUD. It's like flexibility for affordable housing, with the PUD being the mechanism that really allows that flexibility to bring affordable housing where we otherwise might run into hiccups with standard zoning. Efficient land use, we've got a 4-story building with 39 units, 15% are accessible, and it also has our services and management space in there, and really we feel represents the most compatible and efficient land use practice, aligning our objectives while respecting the neighborhood context. Optimizing the site utilization here, we think the building footprint really uses the site, accommodating our landscape buffers, fire truck access. Parking was expressed by staff and tenants, and walkable access from Hickory Way 1 and 2. We're really looking to have interaction between these two sites, food pantry, community events, so minimizing the distance between those two, with the lower side setback, we feel it's beneficial to us. Barrier-free parking and charging stations, so we'll include barrier-free parking, electric vehicle-ready, capable charging stations, really ensuring that safe and accessible amenity for tenants, staff, etc. We're running into incompatibility with existing zoning district dimensions, don't all specifically setbacks, or a major issue we're running into. So we couldn't achieve our optimal number of units with the height and the building footprint envisioned, having us move to the rezoning for PUD for economic and functional feasibility. And the neighborhood character, really, we think the design really enhances the character, emphasizing, the green space connecting to Hanson Park, nearby pedestrian-friendly layout, and again, that integration and the proximity to Hickory Way 1 and 2. And I'll just note that another thing that with the continual affordable housing, one of the things that as a petitioner might be funny, but with the PUD, I kind of like that the affordability gets attached to the land and the zoning, so in perpetuity with you guys, so I just think that's another benefit of the PUD for this. So I'll hand it back over to Brandon.
So we did want to briefly mention, we do have a wetland condition on the site. We've already spoken with Eagle, had a pre-application meeting. It has been noted as unregulated and low quality, but it's a little over 0.08 acres. And so we've run a handful of scenarios to try to orient the site as far away as possible from that wetland condition. And ECT will be the wetland consultant that will help shepherd us through further scenario analysis. Because of the federal funding that we're going to be applying for the project, we have to go through a fairly elaborate 8-step process, and so that consultant team will help us navigate that process. This is just a bit of overview of the actual project program. As Wendy mentioned, we have 39 units that will be on site across 4 floors of housing. All of the units will be 1-bedrooms, serving populations up to 60% AMI, but we imagine the majority of the building will be deeply skewed affordable housing. This will be a permanent supportive housing project, so at least 35% of the units will be designated for those supportive housing tenants. There will be on-site services across the building. One of the things that we do like is the adjacency to the existing Hickory Way 1 and 2 to drive efficiency and really impact in that trade area. We are also going to do an enhanced amount of bike storage on site. We will have really interesting community rooms. We will have a laundry room on each floor. There will be shared outdoor community space that will actually play off of the existing outdoor space at Hickory Way 1 and 2. Central air conditioning will be featured, as well as high-speed internet, and we will have controlled door access. And I'll let our architect team talk a little bit about our sustainability focus.
Just a quick time check, you have 2.5 minutes.
My name is Scott Kelly. I'm from Fusco Schaefer Pappas Architects. We're in Ferndale, Michigan, and we're honored to work with Avalon Housing on this project. As far as the sustainability, I don't think we can get to the level of the project before us. Makes me feel kind of small, but we do understand the 820 guidelines, and we definitely want to adhere to a lot of those guidelines as we move forward in this project, and along with the goals of the A20 kind of go hand in hand with the low-income housing as it can relate to better quality of life for the residents and better use of the building for the property management group in Avalon Housing as they kind of navigate through the years of the project. Our building's going to incorporate a lot of sustainable design elements. Obviously, they're going to well exceed the Michigan Building Code. Features include an insulated envelope, high-performance windows with advanced air sealing, all-electric heating systems, and Energy Star rated appliances. Energy-efficient lighting, all LED lighting equipped with occupancies to further enhance the conservation of efforts, and then also the materials that are being used within the project, making sure that they are sustainable and meet a lot of the different requirements of floor score certification, and making sure that we're using low VOC products in terms of paints and the flooring, and making sure a lot of the adhesives and construction materials that we're using are of a high quality and they're sustainable products, as well as making sure that pre and during construction and afterwards that there's a waste management program to make sure that we are dealing with all the construction waste and or waste from the building is taken care of it correctly.
All right. We're at time. Is there anything further that you wanted to add? Yeah, one additional minute.
We just want to
Sure, it would be important, yeah. Yeah, 2 minutes.
Yes. Okay, so this is kind of just a rendering of the site is how we're showing it, 39 units, obviously 4 stories. It's roughly about 9,500 square feet per floor. All will be 1-bedroom units. You can kind of see at the top there's a big elevation change between where the phase 3 will be and phase 1 and 2 is. So you can kind of see that a little bit, the scale on the top there. We do have the road going down with the parking spaces available to the site, as well as making sure that we dealt with what the fire department needed, as well as waste management to be able to get rid of the waste. Is this button?
Just go one more, there is a hidden slide.
Here's basically a layout of the units, all 1-bedroom units. A lot of the support spaces for the community are in the front of the building by the front entry. We will have plenty of bike storage and as bike parking out in the front. A lot of the back of the house items are towards in the back of the building in terms of electrical, mechanical, and things like that. Kind of an elevations or computer generated it, and then I'll get to there. This is more of the renderings for the building at the moment. A little bit different than the phase 1 and phase 2, but we feel that the architecture fits well, especially trying to make sure that we're using sustainable materials with the brick at the bottom, as well as using a lot of sustainable aluminum throughout the project. That's all I have.
Oh, perfect. Thank you for, this is a pre-PUD conference, so this is, there's no public hearing, but we'll go on to staff and we'll go right into discussion. So, Mr. Kowalski.
So just to kind of summarize up a lot of what has been said, but really, with any PUD, the first step is really meeting with staff, determining what zoning districts, why pick a PUD over a different zoning district. And this one's a little different in that, most of the PUDs you see are existing in the city, that have a zoning set. Obviously, this, as mentioned, was a township parcel. They'll be annexed. The closest, the closest zoning district that matches the land use and the density that is proposed would be the R4E district. So the R4E district, the density more than complies. I mean, the R4E district is significantly denser. But And the height limit is not an issue with that either, because there's no height limit in the R4E, but however, the main issue that comes up is the setbacks that were identified. So working through, again, kind of with the petitioner in trying to see if there's a different zoning district we could use. As I said, really we focus upon the R4E. The challenges with that are the setbacks. Our code also has there's provisions within the zoning code that have our standard setbacks. For the R4E, it's 10 feet. However, if you exceed building length over 50 feet, I'm drawing a blank on it. If you exceed a building length, I believe it's over 50 feet, and the height over a certain, I'm drawing a blank on that as well now too, but there's additional setback that's required for the additional height that you exceed above the limit and for the additional building length. So you add that onto one of the setbacks. So adding that onto the setback it would be onto the north side there, that pushes the required setback, I believe it was 28 feet. And so that's quite a significant setback. To accommodate that setback in an R4E district, obviously the plan would have to be significantly altered. The building would have to slide over, you'd probably eliminate the parking and so on and so forth. And obviously, one of the most important points of that is it would obviously result in a smaller building. So going through PUD justifications, we look at that kind of thing as well. Like one of our priority goals in the city, as everybody well knows, housing and specifically affordable housing. So in the ask on this, we look through and we see, well, what is really the ask on it? Like, are they asking for something that's completely unreasonable and, that's not going to fly in this case, but that's not what they're asking here. Again, it's a setback modification. They do meet, like I said, as the standard setback, but the additional setbacks that are required push that even larger. So in this case, while again, we don't want to default to PUDs. That should be kind of a last case scenario, but really in this case, it's really the only way to accomplish and get a public benefit that the city in a priority goal of affordable housing, as well as accommodating all the restrictions and again the design considerations and restrictions that the applicant has to set that up. So really, and this is a point, again, obviously is a pre-PUD conference. This is a point for you guys as planning commission to give your feedback. We don't do an extensive staff review before this. I mean, we do kind of a preliminary review. We did have a look at the plans. They have a pretty complete plan set that has already been, that we've already viewed. It's not submitted yet, but that we've already reviewed. So most of the issues have been kind of flagged by staff previously, and really one of the most prominent ones, as was mentioned, is the wetland issue and the natural features on the site. The wetland, again mentioned, was a low-quality wetland. That will be, obviously, as we go, when the project is formally submitted, that will be reviewed by our city staff as well, going out there with their natural features staff. And there's a significant, well, I don't know about significant, but there are quite a few landmark trees on the site, and if you go by it now, it's pretty wooded as well, but with those, obviously, again, a goal of the city, preserve natural features and things. So they did their alternatives analysis, which is required for any site plan. Basically, how can you put your use on this? How can you design your building on the site, accomplish what you want by mitigating that impact on natural features? On this site, it's really challenging because, again, where that wetland is kind of located in the center of the site, that kind of leads into the middle of the site, and then the natural features, the trees are kind of sprinkled all around the site. They are saving a significant section of them in the, would be the northwest corner there, as you see. So those trees will be saved as well, and then obviously landscaping will be compliant with city code. So that's kind of it. We don't necessarily have a formal recommendation at this point, but again, staff is supportive of the PUD moving forward.
Could I just ask if Planner Shank would have anything to add?
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, and pleasure to be officially presenting at my first commission meeting. Just wanted to dig in a little bit more really quickly to the issues really are around the setbacks, and both the front setback and the side setback, and they're both kind of quirky, I guess. So Matt mentioned the regulations. The regulation for side setbacks in R4E is 10 feet plus 3 feet for every foot over a 35-foot building, plus 1.5 inches for every foot over 50 feet of building length. So the building length is 168 feet, building height is 48 feet, I believe. So those together and make the side setback requirement go up from the minimum of 10 to
28.
To 28. So it is of note that the adjacent building is Avalon. I'm not sure if it's part 1 or part 2, but it's the adjacent Avalon site. And on the front setback, it's a really curious case too, where there's a right-of-way designation in the front because it is a township, and it is a township parcel that hasn't been incorporated into the city of Ann Arbor yet. So the annexation will run parallel to this process. So the one, as you can see in the staff memo and the documents, the 1 foot setback that couldn't meet the R4E setback requirements is the 1 foot from the right-of-way designation that's designated there.
And I could just add that the front setback, we're working through that with staff right now with engineering, basically, because what it shows as a right-of-way, if they dedicate right-of-way to the city, then that comes off their property, and that's their setback is to that line of the right-of-way. However, there's also an opportunity, which is, again, kind of over the last couple of days, we've been working with engineering, which is potentially you just grant an easement for the right-of-way if the city ever needs it, basically. So an easement does not count against their land. So the front setback issue may or may not be an issue going forward, but even, again, if it seems kind of shocking at first to have a 1 foot setback, in reality, it's more. I mean, the road is we're not going to be expanding Maple Road over there. There are utilities and things like that in there, but that is consistent with the right-of-way that was granted to the Hickory Way projects above. But the main takeaway from this is that right-of-way, that front setback number might be in flux there, because it may end up being, if that right-of-way is just through an easement, then their setback would probably adjust to the previous along the road, right, in one foot inside of the sidewalk, which is pretty typical. So, but again, the main issue that does kind of leave the side setback issue as well.
Got it. Thank you for that presentation. Again, there's no public comment here, and procedurally, just so that I understand, this is a pre-PUD application. They're going to get our feedback, and then they're going to come back for probably an annexation and a PUD recommendation.
It'll be submitted. So the project will be submitted. When the project is submitted, it'll be submitted as an annexation, zoning, and site plan. Okay. So Planning Commission will see all 3 of those at the same time. The annexation, zoning, and site plan, and then after Planning Commission action, that the annexation goes off to the state, gets approved, and then, first the annexation just goes to council agrees to accept it, then it goes to the state, and then it comes back, and then they kind of match up again when they're going to council.
Got it.
So, with the site plan. So you guys will see everything as one piece.
Got it. And assuming that, again, the feedback and the discussion here is PUD truly the appropriate venue, et cetera. So, great. Commissioner Mills, please kick us off.
Great. I think in terms of the standards that we have for PUD, this makes a lot of sense. And actually, given the way that the right-of-way works there, I think the idea of encouraging things that move it back up and maybe even force it up would be better. Also, just practically speaking, I think then you see the kind of jog. It's not paralleling, I mean, it is paralleling the building, but there it's a little offset from the one. So just thinking about light, right? Nobody's ever going to be in shadow all day long, even in the dead of winter, because whichever way, there's some coming in. So I think that that's useful. I am curious. I do think, though, this makes a whole lot of sense. You guys have the land now. Who knows what can happen? I'm curious, and I think, right, so it would run with the land. If in the PUD, the uses, I don't know how you tie, I don't think it makes sense to tie it to an owner, but I think that tying in the affordability is really important, just so that if something happens, we are sure that this will also be supportive housing, and
think if I can add to that, right, that's another, I guess, benefit of that PUD is that is exactly right. We can tie that into the PUD zoning. With an R4E zoning or similar, we can't. So the PUD has that mechanism, so if whatever, Avalon, hopefully it didn't go away or whatever, but the zoning is in place, so whoever builds on that has to adhere to the PUD.
That would give me a little bit more comfort because
Yes, we will work that in.
because the place that we are impacting is just to the north, right? I mean,
yes.
It protects you from I don't know, like not protecting you from yourself, but maybe, I don't know. I think that that's really helpful in this particular situation.
Yep,
I think that this makes tons of sense.
Commissioner Waite.
I have two questions. The first one is to staff. It's a great project, but I just have some zoning questions. C1A, did we consider C1A? Because it has no setbacks. Well, the setback is conditional to the residential that it abuts.
Right.
And does our removal of the conflicting land use buffers address that? Because it doesn't have the height restrictions. It won't have as strict front setback restriction.
Right. Well, the first answer is no. We didn't look at it, so I apologize.
That'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody wants to give us a C1A comparison when we go to the PUD.
Yeah, it could be challenging with the different uses that would, and again, with that district, we wouldn't have a way of guaranteeing affordability going forward.
We wouldn't,
but yeah, we could look.
Sure.
Yes.
And then that leads me to my second question is, because it's a PUD, does it have a requirement for an additional contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund because of the underlying zoning, or is it because it's coming in from the township that's waived?
No, it would still, there's still a formula that even if it came in from the township, there's still a way that we would have to calculate if a market rate project came in here, there would still be a way to calculate based on our land use recommendations and things like that of an affordable housing contribution. So just because it would be annexed, and you're right, like there's no city zoning in place there, but there would still be an affordable housing requirement for any PUD. But again, this one will, I mean, technically this one has one too, but it's more than exceeding it. So it's because it's 100% affordable. So that's
with units on site.
Pardon?
Units on site.
With the units on site.
Yeah.
But if it changed hands,
that's still the zoning. They would have to go, if it changed owners, anything else, that zoning is still in place. They would have to go.
So they would just have to make a contribution.
Well, they would have to, so again, we haven't got obviously this far into it, but writing the supplemental regulations that go with the zoning project, we have the ability as a city to write whether or not they're working with them, whether or not they want that option in the future. Like with any other applicant, we would work with them to say, well, you could do the units on site, or you can do the contribution in lieu. So we can write that in the development agreement. I think in this case, we would probably, I would assume the applicant would be okay with us just writing the units have to be on site. So that, again, even if for whatever reason, God forbid, Avalon and this group goes away, anybody that zoning has to then, it's in place, it has to all be affordable housing on that site to whatever AMI, like we can specify those different numbers within that, and the only way to change that, again, would be to go all the way back, first starting with you, and then going all the way to city council to change that zoning. So no matter who owns the site, that PUD zoning is in effect.
And just a note on the C zoning, our land use element is in the process of being updated now, but in the 2009 land use element, it does address like potential for different types of housing specifically. So whether or not like designated as a C zoning would be in conflict with that or not, because all the other neighboring uses are residential uses, but there are some interesting differences in setbacks between the different zoning master categories, I guess, between C and R.
Great, thank you. Any other commissioners? Commissioner Weatherby.
So I just had a couple comments on the thing. On the plan, the balconies, love that. Just wanted to throw that out there because so often you don't get nice amenities like with affordable housing, and it's nice to see that. And also the interaction between sites. That's something that we often see people try not to have interaction between sites, and so it's really great to see interaction between sites. And I realize that you're sort of both sites, so that makes it easier, but it's still, I appreciate that it is not like walled off from other sectors.
Commissioner Hammerschmidt.
Thank you for thinking about sustainability. Have you considered whether or not you want to be all electric?
Yes, it will be.
You will be? Oh, put that on your bullet points. I didn't see
I
it.
forgot that.
Oh, he said it. Oh, I was probably reading the bullet points and didn't.
And that can be added to the supplemental regulations.
Yes, it can. Awesome, thank you.
And I will say, at our Hickory Way 1 and 2, we did all electric for the units, we did gas for the common. At Viridian, we're doing all electric. Frankly, we're still working out that we're calibrating those units correctly, so they come on at the right temperature. But yeah, intent on this one.
And I think that's...
Oh, no, go ahead, Commissioner
It's just interesting for us to note that an affordable housing unit can go all electric, because a lot of times we hear people say they can't go all electric because of the cost.
You're right.
But say we're still working on our calculations.
Got it, thank you. Any other commissioners with thoughts about applicability of PUD? I mean, this really is a pre-petition conference to evaluate whether this is appropriate application. I guess I'll add,
I was just going to say, my silence is an indication of no concern.
Yeah.
Not indifference, but support, yeah.
Yes, same. It is interesting about the applicability of the PUD here. I mean, as long as we've exhausted kind of like other, applicable zoning categories, as far as all the other kind of checklist items you guys have really hit. So I think this makes sense, and I would also be in support as well. So.
And one other thing I would add to that too, again, like if we were just, as I've mentioned before, like we don't want to default to PUDs, really don't justify that. But so if this was just probably a standard market rate project that's just coming with the apartment, and it was just that side setback for the, that this would be, it would be a different discussion. Because again, noted that the significant priority goal of the city, affordable housing, this more than exceeds any requirement, that is a definitive public benefit that the city will achieve by going forward with a minor setback issue. So.
Got it. I will. Let me just ask one quick question that I was thinking. I noted that 20 parking spots, there's 36 units, and obviously you need a fire lane for making sure that you have compliance in that respect. How does utilization in your units kind of look like, and what led you to say, hey, we want 20 spots? Was it just a spacing thing, or can you lead me through just the thought?
Yeah, so we worked with our property management staff, talked to tenants, our maintenance staff. So we've got 39, so about one for every two. This we're looking to do half, and the thing we talked about 35%, but I think half will be supportive housing. We don't tend to have as much utilization for our supportive housing residents. The other half, we're looking to just be affordable, getting a little bit more of a mix. Frankly, our other sites, often we kind of say that, but they're really all supportive housing.
Sure.
So here with that and kind of exploring it, we want to make sure that it all works for the entire site. So that's why we're going to.
Gotcha. And does EV readiness, I don't know if in a PUD, EV installed / ready is applicable or not. I don't know that I saw any of those.
It wouldn't necessarily, because unless we wanted to, because again, as a PUD, we have the ability to alter parking.
Sure.
Again, requirements and things like that. So that could be a subject for discussion.
Sure.
I mean, it will definitely be a question when staff gets to review, like will EV be parking?
Right.
How much will we add and things like that.
Just food for thought, not really. Again, I think the applicability of the PUD is still, which as a principal core matter of this particular discussion, I think it fits kind of all the categories. So, Commissioner Weatherby, you wanted to add something?
I think my thing about the PUD, I think it's perfectly applicable. I think my concern is that in the future, the PUD is going to be more of a pain for you than it is, I don't have a problem approving it because of the use and all that, but it just does make things a little more complicated on your side if you go to change something, or if you go to, that it then requires coming before. And so that's just something to think about, that like it is more flexible up front, but not necessarily more flexible over the lifetime of the project.
Well, I'll note on that, trying to learn from earlier ones, like when we did our Viridian on our PUD, we committed to enterprise green certification, and someone else in the, someone else in the office said, "You sure you don't want to say equivalent?" I'm like, no, that's fine, that's what we do, we always do. Well, we're now looking to do a different standard, National Green Building Standard, so frankly, we're doing both now, and because we have it in the zoning. So we're also learning from past ones and trying to keep in mind language when we get down to the writing in ourselves, and more than we,
Councilman Bish. Yes.
Yeah, so, and I noticed that you have, or equivalent in the language here. I just wanted to ask because, is it half or 35% of the units that are supportive?
So to get into the tax credit round that we wanted to be, we have to be 35% in there. So we wrote that, we drafted it up actually for an earlier meeting, trying not to overcommit for that, but in subsequent conversations with our services team and where we want to go, we're planning to commit to half as the supportive housing.
Okay, so you have the language in your proposal here right now is up to 35%?
Oh.
So maybe you could say something like minimum 35%. And that way, if you end up doing half, that's great. If you don't, you hit the minimum that you need for the funding category.
Thank you for that.
Last comment from you, bike parking, just were there any intentional thoughts given to kind of location or storage? If we don't have, as many parking spaces, or how are people getting around bus stops and proximity, but also accounting for bicycles? Any thoughts on that respect?
Well, we definitely have it. It would be more towards the front. For the bike parking, it may not show up on that, but I think we also, if you go to the floor plan, we also have a bike storage room. We've got for interior storage for bicycle parking as well on that first floor.
Perfect.
So we're definitely making accommodations for that.
Awesome, thank you. Any other thoughts from commissioners at this point in the juncture? Does the petitioner or pre-petitioner, do you guys think you have kind of what you were hoping for, feedback?
Yeah, I really appreciate it,
Largely, it seems to be in support of the applicability of PUD after innovation in land use, affordable housing, etc. So, staff, any final thoughts?
No.
With that, I think we can conclude. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. How's everyone doing? Just energy / you guys want to crush through the CPC, or you guys want to take 5?
I think we should power through.
Okay. All right.
But I'm willing to.
All right. Sounds like a plan. All right. We are moving on to the next item, which is CPC work program. I'm going to introduce this, which is the 2024-2025 City Planning Commission work program discussion and adoption. Work program is adopted on an annual basis pursuant to Commission's bylaws. On October 17th, 2023, Planning Commission reviewed and adopted a 23-24 work program. The present proposal updates the status of all items, includes line items for recent City Council resolutions and other new work since October. Staff recommendation is approval. With that, I will turn it over to Ms. Kelly for staff presentation.
Thank you. The last time that we had a discussion about bylaws, about work program, it was significantly past the indication of when the work program should be adopted by the Planning Commission. In the bylaws, it specifies May, and so in the, let me just do the minimal amount of hybrid participation that we can here. Was to just share that we'd like to get back to that May deadline. This does not mean that this is the only time that you can do updates to the work program throughout the year, but that you are supposed to do at least one update of it now. We have 2 meetings in May. Your next meeting has about 6 items on it, and getting requests for more all the time, so it seems to be feast or famine for our Planning Commission agenda items. So even though the plan was, the work program was adopted in October. There still were a lot of things to update and clean up. For example, there are a lot of new council resolutions that we still don't have certainty about exactly when those will take place, if they will be undertaken in-house or by an external consultant. Those are conversations that are happening primarily with Mr. Delacourt, Mr. Leonard, and the Deputy City Administrator, and of course City Council. But I wanted to place just a note that those are happening and that there are early discussions around them, and then when they start to be assigned, there will be a lot of work. And then there's some times where we don't always predict the work that comes up, and a good example of that is the TC1 text amendment, which we didn't necessarily anticipate when this was prepared last October, because we had just been in the process of crafting so many other changes to the TC1 district. But now there's a significant project proposal that I think many people would love to see work with this zone and happen by right. And that was now moved up, so it's been before the Planning Commission twice. It'll be in front of you again for another discussion out of the ORC, advancing to the working session, we hope next week. So I can go through what the red lines are, but there are a few options tonight. You could decide to just continue under your October plan. You could adopt the staff proposed plan. You can make adjustments to either of those, or you could request that we table this and discuss it at a future meeting. It will not be your next meeting, which would take us out of May. Otherwise, you'd have 7 items. There were only 30 on tonight's agenda, and here we are.
It's only 9.
It's only, the night is young.
I think
There's
it's
a
because we're in
tornado
the
warning.
basement.
Yeah.
And it feels like
It's just a watch. It's just a tornado watch.
and we're already safe.
Yeah. I know, that's what I was
We're the light till 11.
It feels like time moves differently down here. So, just a summary of basically what's been happening with your work program in numbers. In 2023, we completed 8 items, and we started 4. There were 12 items total. In 2024, we have 13 started items. Some of those represent a lot of other items, like the council resolutions, but it's quite an increase from the previous year and also from 2022. And then in 2025, this is kind of like where things that might shift around even further have been placed. And then we peeled out items as in the version that you saw in October that in consultation with Manager Leonard make most sense for the comprehensive plan. And so then there are 10 items identified. And then there's some ongoing work that is not insignificant for staff. For example, this is not like a tidying year for CIP. This is a project proposal year, but it's also a year where we're making a lot of efforts to improve our selection criteria. In some cases, we're entirely rewriting them. And this is from the perspective of equity and sustainability criteria that pervade every single asset group, and also individually in all of the asset groups. We've been asked by the Planning Commission to be more heavily involved and to provide more information into the CIP process, and we've tried to take that charge to heart. And so it has been, again, we're just working from the same pool of staff for all items, pretty much. So that is another thing that affects our capacity. So looking at our red lines here, there were some things that were started in 2023 that if they were completed but they weren't marked complete before, I put it in red. I clarified the title of this, so I put it in red, but Actually, this, for some reason, was not on the work plan before, but this was completed. And this was approved by City Council in January. And the TC1 Plymouth corridor, Washtenaw is still in process. I gave an estimated date for when that will be advancing to the Planning Commission. So this is all in your packet. You can see this. If you have questions about it, you can let me know in discussion. I did provide some indication of things that were moved and tried to explain why. And that gave us the proposed version for adoption, which has accept changes at the end. So this is what is referenced in your motion. And I think that's, yeah, and then I also had your original approved. If we want to take a look at that on the screen, I can pull it up.
Got it. Thank you for the priming of that. And then, so yeah, the proposed motion that I'm going to read is the Ann Arbor City Planning Commission adopts 2024-25 City Planning Commission Work Program. We'll go into discussion with, moved by Commissioner Abrams and seconded by Councilmember Dish. Well, we're in discussion, and I'd like for actually this to be fairly free flowing. So this one actually we don't have to follow before. Yeah, go ahead.
So I want to thank you very much, Ms. Kelly, for the clarity of what you've presented to us here and the notations about things having been moved up because they are either being worked on or they were aligned with a comp plan or they are part of the economic development resolutions or whatever. That's really helpful. So I just want to note, that 2023 is more than twice 2022, and that in 2024, all those things that say CC resolution placeholder, the 4 things, those are going to take more than 4 lines when the substance of those come in. Some of those are 3 things, at least. So,
yeah. Some of them have 20 things, yes.
Oh, yes, yes, we can say that too. Yes. So I am really reluctant to move anything else. I just think we just don't know what's coming. And what's on the 2024 work plan here is responsive to not only petitioners, text amendment requests, which I guess we kind of have to respond to those, but the staff discussion with co-ops, which has been going on for some time, has also been moved up in response to discussions aligned with the comp plan and some importance that council attaches to that. So I'm not saying that we should vote on this right here and now because maybe we're not quite ready and we have questions and we want staff to come back and give us a memo or just give us some more information. But I really hope that we're not going to stuff any more things in there because I just think it's completely unrealistic. Because even if we hire external, even if the city hires external help for some of the economic development, they're all part of economic development, even though only one is called that. They still have to be supervised. I mean, and so it's not as if, oh, good, we can hive all that work off. No, there's a lot of interaction. I mean, I think we all saw that with the work that we did with the fine consulting team that we had for the premium change.
Right.
That still required a lot of work from staff. So I feel that I am in a spirit of caution about this work plan because it's meaningless if it's totally unrealistic. And so, but I think that we are going to have a lot of long meetings because we are moving into the comp plan implementation season. On top of that, we have this initiative led by the Deputy City Administrator, which actually is part of what Mr. Garber brought up before and addresses some things that we've all been talking about as priorities for us. They are incorporated in some of those things. So that's more than 2 cents. Or no, it's about 2 cents worth, but spoken at too great length.
Oh, very good. Thank you for that feedback. My thought was actually with Mr. Westfall's comment about assigning months or at least quarters to them. That helps us to at least get a sense of like, when are we really going to tackle and like what's the sequence of things? Or is there any kind of temporal order that you have here? Is it in order of kind of when we expect things to hit, or is it just like, let's dump it into this bucket?
I think if we put months to it, we could always put months to it, but they would just be moving around all the time. Because the text amendment that we received, we didn't understand when that would be. We thought that we were going to get a much earlier head start on building height and average finished grade. We had a draft from our consultant, and then there was disagreement among staff about whether or not to move forward with the proposal that was presented, and then we ran into some capacity issues to retake it up because, again, there have to be check-in meetings, there needs to be sometimes joint work meetings with consultants. It would be really nice if we could just hand things to people and then they turn it back to us perfect, but it's more of a collaborative thing. So we actually did try to, just for that item, for example, move that forward several months ago, but we ran into a wall. So I think that I would be happy to put months in here, but I don't think that they would give extra certainty to, I don't think they would necessarily provide the certainty that is sought after by adding them.
Got it. Okay, understood. I was thinking from maybe a prioritization or even like a quarter standpoint, so that we're like, in this 3-month bucket, maybe this can get kind of tackled. But I understand it's an iterative process.
Yeah.
So,
some things are do feel like more prescient. The timing of them, for example, the text amendment, we don't want to lag too far behind a significant project that could add a lot of housing and be really great for the city. We want to be responsive to that and also responsive to the fact that changing the zone could benefit many districts in the city. So City Council, of course, they're our boss, and they're telling us that there are certain things that are important to them. We're taking that really seriously. So there are certain things that if they become matter of city policy, it may be different than a nice to have item, for example, that might be covered through another discussion, and not to demote it, but like the co-op discussion, there are a lot of different factors there. It's married to group housing, it's married to some other things about unrelated persons. It feels like it would take a long time to resolve. If there's something discrete that is in the council resolutions that we can take up immediately, then it's going to move to the top of the queue. The pro-housing grant, we just don't know if we will be receiving that. If we do receive it, then we will immediately have to start work on it with the city of Ypsilanti and dedicate staff time. And it would be a really great opportunity, and it would be a good idea for us to move that higher if we get it. It would be really exciting. So,
got it. Yeah, I sense a little bit of hesitation, or it seems like a futile effort, really, because we have to reprioritize when we get feedback from external parties, as you were saying. So, may not be worth the squeeze, is what I'm hearing. Commissioner White.
So I do want to move things up into 2024, unlike my colleague who asked for us not to do that. Namely, I just want to name the things I'd like to move up from 2025 into 2024, because I really do believe a majority of our time in 2025 will be spent on the comp plan text amendments. So the bike parking requirements, I think that needs to come up into this calendar year, because we're continuing to see developments, and it feels accessible to me in terms of something. Well, I won't justify it. I'll just say this is what I want. The other piece is the traffic studies, I think that is in the transportation review criteria, is that correct? Before I say the wrong thing.
Could you point out to me
So in,
transportation demand management or?
No, in 2023, right under the last green line, there is a transportation review criteria.
The second reading of that is going to.
Right, the first reading was yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
But
don't
does
know
that
why I have the wrong date there, but the second reading will be a month from now.
Is that the consideration of like the de-emphasizing of cars and traffic as congestion and more into the multimodal? Because that's what I remember from last
That's what
night.
that amendment was, yes.
Okay,
It
great.
changed all of the references from traffic to transportation, multimodal transportation, and it reduced some redundant criteria to the Institute of Transportation Engineers Guide.
Yeah, because I think this, we have comments in our packet today of a development that's coming on Silo Church, that's 75 townhomes, and the person who wrote in is, it's going to add all these cars, and I live on Silo Church, and it's not going to add any of those cars. They're not actually going to notice that those cars are actually there. And so moving, I guess that's already in line because it's
I
here.
almost marked it complete, but I don't want to speak for City.
All right, great.
I think it's
And
going to
then-
be
But
approved with
It
no
will likely be
problem.
approved, but I thought, I almost marked it green. I'm like, it has not been voted on.
You don't want to jinx anything.
That would not
And
be
then
appropriate.
the unzoning is still something, since I've sat at the table, I have, okay, great. And the other piece is the mixed-use neighborhoods. I think it's going to be helpful to get some of that conversation started sooner rather than later. Because as I was even sitting here thinking of the PUD that we just saw, I thought, gosh, if we had a different zoning category than the ones that we currently have, is it possible that they would have benefited from that zoning category as opposed to putting them into a PUD? And I appreciated Commissioner Weatherby's comment that today it's flexible, tomorrow it's not as flexible. And so that was really salient for me. And so where do we start those conversations? Because I imagine there's going to be some pre-work that we'll need to do to begin to think about that, both inside the plan and the recommendations from our consultants, but also how do we adapt it into our UDC? And then on top of that, we're not the first people to do this. So there is lots of examples of communities that are similar size. Gainesville, for example, Charlottesville, Virginia, for example, that have moved from a primary residential zoning classification into either a neighborhood zoning or something else. And so those are my pieces to move over, because while I agree with Councilmember Dish that the council requested resolutions are coming, those feel ethereal, maybe is the word that I want to use here.
There were some
because-
very specific
They were
recommendations.
super specific.
Yeah.
But they have to go through some processes to get to this table, as noted by yourself, that there are conversations that are happening, not at staff level, but that are happening at the deputy city administrator, at the community services director, and then at the planning
But with
manager
an
side.
expected end date of December 2025.
Okay.
So that somewhere between the ethereal stuff now and the more specific stuff in December 2025, the expectation is that they'll be significantly advanced. Mixed-use neighborhoods, I do think, is being discussed. I think now is actually the point in the comprehensive plan where I've started to see discussions like that pop up more. There are going to be a series of more intensive and focused conversations with small business owners about integration into neighborhoods. There is a proposed concept about how to introduce more commercial units, maybe accessory commercial units, if that could work in Ann Arbor by some council members. Staff were asked to look at that, and we passed that on to our consultants to fold into the same conversation. I think that that will be present in the next steering committee meeting, which out of an abundance of transparency, we have decided to broadcast because we don't want anyone to have the perception that these are excluding or deciding things on behalf of Ann Arborites that they don't have access to. So if you would like to tune into that steering committee meeting, you certainly can. Those details will be posted by Manager Leonard and administrative staff when they're available. And then the subcommittee for the comprehensive plan from the Planning Commission, I would encourage to push for these items and understanding how they get folded into that process. I have insight into that, but I do not have as many details, I think, as you're interested in tonight.
Sure, I don't know that I'm specifically interested in anything other than putting it on the agenda, because if it's there, then at least there's some indication that we're moving in that direction. And thanks for the feedback that you just noted. I would also like to vote for moving the lot size and the setback review into this year as well, because I feel like those are, because there's a lot of UDC stuff that we're going to have to do.
They are functionally started this year because they are part of the comprehensive plan. They just are not being worked up by staff in detail, but if these existed in 2024, they would say discussion. Where do I have that?
Sure, yeah, because right. And I don't know if that's at
to make them
ORC
look
or
special and indicate they're part of the comprehensive plan that were put here.
Yeah.
Other thoughts, so to summarize, I think you would like to see mixed-use neighborhoods, lot size setback review, and bike parking requirements, or bicycle parking requirements.
And in particular, what I'm looking for there is some zoning or some regulations around adding cargo bikes to our development process, that there are at least some spots created for that. Like we have the Class A, Class B, Class C. Is there a new Class D that speaks to a cargo bike so that people can have that inside their developments?
Got it. Thank you.
From my point of view, that's without any justification for what I'm asking for.
100%.
This links onto two things that Commissioner Weitz just said. That so in our and the rest of the ORC should correct me if I got this wrong, but I feel like in our last conversation about simplification, unzoning, there's two different things that are part of that. One is like zone collapse, and effectively the sense was that that is a after comprehensive plan conversation. There's some work that we kind of looked at, like what might make sense, but work that is a bigger thing. So that's part of the conversation. The other thing was, what are really complicated sections that could be simplified? And I thought that one of the way too many pages was about transportation, like the non-motorized transportation, and also like the multipliers for EV charging, and we don't require parking anymore. And so like it's a massive, complicated table. And so I think that might be the opportunity to kind of think about, okay, how do we simplify this so that you don't have to think about what all, like, it doesn't have to change with the use, right? The multiplier doesn't change with the use, but also that we get the things that we want.
Right. And I was thinking about that again with the PUD that we just had, because we have these sub-rules. So in the R table, there's A, B, C, D, and then we just heard that if the building exceeds a certain length, you have to add so much inches to the setback. And I was like, let's just get a red line and go through that, and go through this, and go through that, because they could have come in under R4E without that restriction, and then they don't have to do anything. It's just like, see you later, it's by right, just get it zoned that and build it.
So to that point, of the zoning simplification, I don't know that, like, of what will survive. I was left with a sense that, like, there's part of this that we definitely don't, that we're not going to bite off now.
Sure.
But there's another part of it that maybe there's some really simple things that Sarah Hammerschmidt, I think, committed to, like.
I did. haven't done anything.
striking things through. But I thought that the section that's on transportation might be the thing, and so that could almost be almost a merging of those two things. Of the transportation, like that's the flavor that zoning simplification is.
And bike and
the zoning, what I'm thinking is the zoning simplification became more specific. It was
so hone the ORC zoning simplification discussions on the transportation regulation.
Possibly. So that was the connection to what we were saying. So like, I might be with you. I don't know that we can bring it up to 2024, but I think there's part of it that started. And
7 months.
Yeah, there's a lot of things on here too. I'm just looking, is there anything else we can cross off in 2020? I think that the specific things about rezoning, like North Main and Felch to residential, that should be off this list entirely. For 2025, I would vote.
This is 2025 plus, so this is just everything that had been on a previous work plan that wasn't.
Yeah, like we do with the CIP, like put it.
So the rezone Main and Felch.
I just feel like that's been on there so long, and that if we can't collapse zones, I mean, I feel like that's the thing that needs to come out of the comp plan.
Okay.
If we need to wait for that, I'd vote that one off the island.
Could you clarify again, what is the post-comp plan section? What does that mean, that section?
I think that's just like, we tackle it after the comp plan.
That's how I understood it.
Yeah, Q4 2025 to 2026
Right.
is, I think comp plan's supposed to be done in Q3, Q4 next year, right?
So in what respect are you making it special?
By peeling those things off and saying these conversations should happen not a la carte, but together as part of a comprehensive
implementation of the comprehensive plan.
A word that was not comprehensive, but it just didn't happen. So consolidated effort.
So it's kind of like the category of 2025 plus is, this is a stew of stuff. Like, we don't know when we're going to get to, which it makes sense, I think, to pull some things out of there that people are passionate about and that are really closely in line to our goals. And the post-comp plan things might have at one time been in 2025 plus, but they've been pulled out because those are the things that we anticipate their first
acting on quickly.
Yeah, their first step after the comp plan.
Or they interrelate, and it would be most responsible to think about them together. For example, if we start to change lot sizes, it should be in concert with considering consolidating our zones.
Yeah.
And that would be, if we're going to undertake such a large effort, it would make the most sense to do those together. If we are going to consolidate zones, which would have the implication of updating zoning maps in the city and changing neighborhood property character, that is something that really should be done comprehensively as part of a citywide zoning update recommendation. So these are reasons why some of these things were put in that spot, is because the conversation for many of these, yes, in some cases has already started or is being distilled in different ways, but there isn't necessarily an emerged recommendation that staff can take and start to craft ordinance updates around, or something that is more fine-tuned. You could just as easily take this and give it a little prefix that says, comp plan, and put it under 2024 and mark it all discussion. I just don't think that it will result in different outcomes for what you see at this table. I think it will just put it in a different category.
Yep, but I think the message that I'm getting is the way you listed it, you're flagging it as a priority. I think
that the comp plan, we've been told by the planning commission, we'd like, that you would like to address these things as part of the comp plan because they are important. If this list doesn't reflect very well those things, then we can adjust that. And again, I would encourage the participants of the subcommittee to bring this up specifically as expectations and to talk through this list, which we can put on an agenda later this year and modify again if you would desire.
So this seems almost less like post-comprehensive plan than like comprehensive plan should address the following.
My understanding would be that a lot of these things are going to be the core crux and thought process during that comp plan, and it's really taking the action to implement, right, and actually executing on these things happen, as soon as that comp plan. Because I think we're going to see what iterations of the plan, Q1, Q2, I think next year as well. So these are the topics that we expect to be addressed, and then we will execute on them.
And before we just called it comprehensive plan, but I think Manager Leonard suggested post-comprehensive plan because that's when they would likely be adopted.
Right.
And so we could strike post if that's confusing.
No, it's not confusing.
That's
It's
not. That's not the issue. I think for me, the issue is the comp plan doesn't change the UDC.
Right, and then
but we talk about it, from my experience, as if it does. The actual changes to the UDC are text amendments.
Correct.
That somebody proposes, and the way that I think it works is it starts either at the table, we ask staff, we want to change this thing in the UDC. Then it goes to ORC, then ORC has a conversation about it, and then there's a staff presentation, and then we discuss it and vote on it. We're going to have anywhere between 100 and 200 text amendments, unless you decide to put them all together in a big package that has to come through this table and then go to City Council. It's going to go through 3 public hearings, right? 1 here, 2 there, and then it's going to be voted on and adopted. So when I am talking about a lot size change, we know we're going to have to look at, for instance, the residential zoning map. We have a lot of different lot zones. We're going to have to say, what do we want in these lot zones? How do we want that to look? The comp plan's going to say, we want to build these kinds of neighborhoods. So that's going to give direction to that. But somebody is going to have to say, it's 1,200 across all of these zoning categories. And then we discuss it, debate it, and then vote on it, and then move it forward. So that's the thing that I am trying to highlight when I hear comp plan. That's just going to give us a document to guide us, but it's not actually, and I've asked this every single time we've talked about the comp plan, are the consultants going to provide us a list of text amendment recommendations? And I've been told, so please correct me if I'm wrong, that is not going to happen. They are not going to finish the comp plan and then give us a packet of text amendments that we can start to work through and adopt. We are going to have to generate that. And by we, I think I mean staff, but maybe not.
I was just gonna say, I think all of that is right. I don't think there's any, maybe I'm just reading this spreadsheet differently. I don't think there's anything here that counters what you're saying.
I would agree with you.
Well, no, but I mean, just for clarity, so that maybe if there's any way we could make it more clear, I understand everything under that list to basically be a pull-down menu that's being inserted in the left whenever we get that, whenever the comp plan is done. Like, once the comp plan is done, then all of this stuff gets slotted in here. We just don't know when that is.
Right? I hear you.
So maybe it just needs to be more
I definitely agree
clarity
with
there.
the words that you are saying. I don't know that it's going to follow that way. So what I'm highlighting with what I'm asking for is, we know some of these things are coming and they require UDC text amendments.
So put them in the
Why can't we get started on that now? I just do not understand why we cannot get started on that.
One part of that answer, I was just thinking the other day about collapsing the R districts.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm prejudging the comp plan process if I were to attempt it. And that's the most simple, easy to bite off thing. Right? I could take that table and I say, 1,400, 1,400, 1,400, 1,400. 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. I don't know that that's where the comp plan process is going to land. So I'm going to do that work. That's going to take me a ton of time. And then I'm going to chew up some time here. And then in a year, I'm going to get the comp plan back, and I'm going to have wasted that time. And I'd rather not do that.
Unless you hear from city council that they want the increase of density across the whole residential district, and the consultants have already said, we're going to have to increase this density across the entire residential
I think you just
district.
need to shortcut the process.
Oh, I'm not trying to shortcut it, I'm just trying to start it.
So, well, again, I think, so I hear you, Commissioner White, that there's an, hey, let's be efficient about this, because it'll take time to generate.
It's going to take 3 years.
No,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
certainly understand that you're looking to be efficient with kind of the execution of the comp plan, and so let's prep, but there is, again, this kind of like, we're presupposing specific outcomes when we need to let that process play out.
Sure, and maybe lot size was the wrong example for that.
I suppose also this is a function also of staff capacity, and I think it behooves us to listen to, the department that's been down, 3 people. When they say, hey, this is what I think is reasonable for us to, really chew up, because they don't want to rush this through and half-ass this thing any more than, we do, and we want to make sure that the staff has had time to process, etc. Excuse my language.
Well, I had never said that this was reasonable for staff. This is stretching us.
Right.
We have backfilled 2 positions, as Shirley said, but with all due respect to Julie and Mariana, they're just getting the ropes, underneath them. And it takes our existing staff time, same pool of people who do all this stuff, who process every petition that comes to you. It takes their time to carefully train up newer staff who, although they may have other work experience, they're new to working in city government in some cases, and specifically in city planning, specifically in the city of Ann Arbor with our UDC, with our courts, with our different departments. It is something that frankly just requires a lot of patience. I wish that I could fast track some of this work myself, but it is it's daunting to think about how we will manage even the consultant labor that may go into some of the consultant resolutions. I have concerns about how realistic the proposal in front of you is. So you can add whatever you would like. I just can't promise more staff capacity because you've added.
No, thank you for that feedback, and I think it's really important for us to listen to say, hey, and I certainly want to be as efficient as possible and understand that these text amendments will take time. To me, the ones that are most glaring are the city council resolutions. As you said, we don't know how many drop downs there are when you unclick and unbundle exactly. Again, some have 20. So again, the choice in front of us, there's 4 options. We can just say, let's live with the 2023 one, not make modifications. I don't think anybody, doesn't sound like people want that. We can amend this. I hear support on Commissioner White's part to increase biking, mixed-use neighborhood. We think that this is actually kind of a stretch in its current state. So I'm inclined to say we accept the 2024 in its current format. That's kind of where my head is at. Again, 4 options: adopt 23, 24, amend it, or reject it altogether, and then it comes back to us and we address it in June essentially. So I invite other people's thoughts. I mean, and again, this doesn't have to be a unanimous thing either. There can be dissent, but we do have to talk about whether we adopt this tonight or kick it back. So I invite others' thoughts. That's kind of where I'm standing. So,
Just, are we voting on the options? There's not a, was there a there was a resolution.
Yes.
So it's a yes or no, okay.
Yeah, so we'd be voting to accept this.
Right.
Unless somebody introduces a motion to amend.
I'm good with this, for the record, hearing all concerns and hearing all that.
So, any other further discussion on this? With that, if there's no motions to amend.
It doesn't look like there'd be support, so no one wants to find they have no support on the table.
With that, I will move it to a voice call. This is the proposed City Planning Commission motion to adopt the 2024-2025 City Planning Commission work program in its current format with no changes. Mix Kelly, let me know voice votes.
Yeah, it can just be a all in favor or any of those.
All
It doesn't need to be roll call.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
We can propose amendments to this, right? No, I mean, I thought I heard Kleiner Kelly earlier say, like, in subsequent meetings, if we decide that there is capacity, or there is a specific discrete proposal that makes sense, and that we can, in fact, we can do that.
For example, the 6/11 working session has room on it to discuss, the 7/9 working session has room on it to discuss.
I thought those were places on Church Street.
I was like, so we're on another 6/11, yeah, exactly.
June 11th. Yeah. No, when you
We thought you were talking about addresses.
Addresses? I was
You really
thinking,
have the professional
wow,
portion going. Planning Commission. No, the June 11th working session or the July, I don't have, usually we try to put the pre-PUD petition applications, or then there's sometimes special requests from other departments that come up that we try to save space. I don't like to put too much more than 2 items on a working session agenda, but we definitely can. We could also put it on a regular session agenda, although we like to, this happened to be a lighter meeting in terms of the agenda items, so I felt comfortable putting it on to allow time for discussion. As folks have pointed out, it's still only 9:49.
The lot size piece wasn't a hypothetical. I mean,
What's that?
The lot size thing was not hypothetical. I was thinking
No, it's not a hypothetical.
But I couldn't, but the reason I'm asking the question is if it turns into an idea that has, like, that doesn't feel connected to the comp plan process in some way, then that was the point of the question.
Yep, gotcha. And it can come back at a working session, so please talk with staff or, email the rest of the commission to try to get it on the working session agenda. That takes us to our last public comment. This is a second opportunity for persons to speak up to 3 minutes about any issue. We'll first call on individuals present, then remote participants. To speak during the public hearing remotely, please press *9 if listening by phone, or use the raise hand feature if viewing through the web link. And for phone access, please call 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 977-6634-1226. City staff will select callers that raise their hand using the last 3 digits of the phone number by name if available. You'll hear an automated announcement saying that the host is allowing you to speak, and when speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any background sound so we can hear you clearly. For either method of participation, please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Is there anyone here that would like to speak at this time? Seeing none, are there any remote callers?
There are not. I will note that about 5 minutes ago, I was automatically logged out of Zoom due to inactivity. I'm not sure why, because I'd been sharing screen and looking at participants and definitely touching the screen. We've had a lot of challenges here in the basement, so hopefully this is the last meeting where we do this. But unfortunately, due to that, there are currently no rejoined attendees. I don't remember the last time I looked. I think we were down to maybe 3 people about 20 minutes ago. So I'm not sure if they organically dropped off.
Or
I'm very sorry.
Or were eliminated.
Technical difficulties, thank you. If there is no one that would, or no one currently on, then we will close public comment. Please do email or feel free to reach out to us. We're moving on to agenda item 12. Is there any commission proposed business? Lot size, anybody?
Well, for example, if you'd like to see your work, if you would like to see a dedicated work program discussion later this summer, or revisit this so that you don't feel like this was just, pushed on you in May, you are now in keeping with your bylaws, which is great. And we could have moved this to July or August before, and you wouldn't have been in keeping with your bylaws. So now you're in keeping with your bylaws, and we can reschedule it if you'd like to revisit it. And I'm happy to put that on an agenda for more discussion if the planning commission directs me to do so.
Thank you.
And if our new staff ends up getting up to speed really quickly or finding certain things that they really want to work on, or we could move things up through staff, you're like, that's not going to happen, there's too much to do.
I heard they're taking months.
It might make sense to do it when we get some more specificity around the council and the directives, because some of them probably align with some of the things that we've been wanting to do for a while. And I didn't realize that we gave you until December 25th, Christmas?
2025.
Oh, December 2025.
A year and a half.
No, but that's not to give us the prioritization, that's to finish the work, yeah? Yeah, okay, so the prioritization should come sooner.
Right, between now and then.
Oh, we really need to clarify that.
I do have one
Well, the work
clarifying
breakdown, the
question,
clarity, there's a lot of
which I
steps there.
neglected to ask.
Yes, Commissioner Weich.
It's back to the commission work program.
Okay.
It had the bylaw updates and Chapter 8 amendments as a first reading at City Council for yesterday. I don't think that took place.
That definitely didn't take place.
Okay. So if we
I
could just get an
will-
update
I will check that
for
date.
that, because that affects our, not quorum, but
Yeah.
majority votes
Yeah.
was what we were considering there.
Yeah.
I will check on that. I'm not sure why it would have been delayed, but I'll check on that.
I mean, they had 9 public hearings, but I don't think that was one of them. I listened to all 9, so
Weren't they enjoyable?
they were.
Thank you, Commissioner Weich.
Sure. I move that we adjourn.
Seeing no one else, moved by Commissioner Weich and seconded by Councilmember Dish. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bring your gavel
This was weird.